Okay, so our presenters this evening are Wasim Khan and Andrea Smith of I'm going to slaughter this name, Baraza African Culture Center. And so Wasim Khan is the CEO of the Baraza African Culture Center, where he's devoted 30 plus years of international and business experience to creating relationships with long-term positive impact on people and communities in the United States. I can't believe 30 years because you don't look like you're, both of you, I'm like, have they been doing it that long? He facilitates cross-cultural communication and multicultural development. His most recent activities have included work with Indigenous peoples, immigrants, and refugees. And he just has been doing some traveling and just got in, and he can tell you that if he wants to, but he's a little jet lagged tonight, he says. Andrea serves as the Chief Operating Officer and Chief Education Officer for the Baraza African Culture Center for 30 plus years. Again, I'm like, really? Ms. Smith has devoted her experience in education to areas including cultural proficiency, cross-cultural communication, and diversity and equity inclusion. She has extensive experience working cross-culturally and with multicultural people and groups. She has a long history of advocacy for refugees, immigrants, and Indigenous peoples. So I think they are perfect to present for our workshop tonight. So I'm going to turn it over to the two of you, and it is yours, and then we'll do our quick Q&A.
Well, thank you, Rose. And it's nice to get a few insights on all of you, and some of you are familiar faces, so it's very good to see old friends and make some new ones here. And listening to your experiences, I think what we're going to tell you, I think a lot of it won't be surprising. Hopefully it'll be some new insights, but we've really set this up to be more of a conversation. We will have a PowerPoint, and I will admit to you right now, I use a PowerPoint to keep me on track because I can get sidetracked so easily talking about things. So it kind of just to keep things flowing, but please, at any point in time, if you have a thought, a question, a statement, anything, just please chime in. You don't even have to worry about raising your hand or any of that, because when I start screen sharing, it's really hard to see all of that. So please feel free to chime in at any time. Anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, like I just came back from the Gambia, first time in West Africa. Time difference is a pain. My mind is in the Gambia, my body's in Canada, and I'm in the United States right now. And we are fasting. So I'm a Muslim, Ramadan is on. I sincerely apologize if I'm not alert, but you guys can pinch me if you want. There you go. Listening to you guys in the beginning brought a lot of memories to me as I travel for a living. And going to the Gambia, actually, I met the Mandingo, the Fula, the Julas, and it was quite intriguing. They spoke a Bantu language, which I grew up in Africa. I could hear words and I could make out what they were saying. I speak 7 languages fluently, by the way. And listening to this language, so I'm like, hey, if I stayed here for 6 more months, I can literally speak this language. Only to realize I'm so wrong. I mean, I would say something, I think I offended a few people because that was not what I meant to say. But having said that, languages is what I love doing, is learning, traveling, and making those bridges, breaking down the walls. And a lot of times, I worked with the refugees for a long time. A lot of times, people think that if you don't speak English, you are uneducated. Little do they know that we can speak and write in 4 different languages, English being the most difficult language in the world. And the experience that you guys had is, I've had a different one. And on my surprise is, because I speak different languages and I am perceived in a different way when I walk into a room and they're talking about me, but I can literally understand that they're talking about me. And this is interesting, especially when it comes to like the Indian languages. And it's a teaching moment at that time. First I like always hear what they have to say about me. And it's not normally good stuff, trust me on that part. And before I leave, we do have a conversation about how bad it is or no, not to do about, and people do catch themselves doing that. But I think enough for that for now.
Oh, I was going to start out with the Swahili that I'm sure everybody here knows, and whether you know it or not, all of you do know some Swahili. If you've watched The Lion King, you know some Swahili. And, you know, there's the song about no worries. And so I'm sure you can tell me how you say that in Swahili.
Hakuna, come on.
Hakuna shida.
Yeah, there you go. That's a new one.
Yes, that's not from the song, but that is
I
good.
like that
That
one.
is good.
Hakuna Matata, no?
There you go. Yep.
Hakuna Matata is a song. And then the name of the lion cub that the movie's about, what is his name?
Simba, lion.
Somebody said it out there.
Who said it? Yeah, Simba. Simba means lion. So, you know, but Simba's friend, the monkey, I think it was a monkey.
Yes.
What is his name?
Rafiki, it means friend.
Which means, yes, means friend. So, you know, whether we know it or not, thank you, Disney. We've all learned some Swahili, even though, you know, the way they sing Hakuna Matata is a little different than you'd hear it in Africa, but at least some culture and some of that is getting out. But what I'm going to do is start my screen sharing so we can stay on track here. And I have to be smarter than my computer, which is always a challenge for me. And as was kind of mentioned, you know, this very specifically says Swahili cultures, because while there is a Swahili tribe, a specific group of people whose first language, their tribal language is Swahili, it's a very small portion of Swahili speakers across Africa and around the globe. So we very specifically here have talked about Swahili cultures and tried to pick out some of the things that are kind of universal across a lot of those. A lot of those may be things that are kind of very African. But if you've observed something or had a question about something, please, as we go through this, feel free to chime in. And I don't know if you guys can see all of that on that screen. Anyway, but I won't make that smaller. Last November, UNESCO announced that.
So just as we do this, I would like them to read the words that are in Swahili. Not
they're reading the Swahili.
Yes.
Okay.
So anybody wants to take a jab at this, and then
Saba Saba.
pretty good.
Saba
And
Saba.
Saba. Go ahead.
And Saba Saba is 7/7, which means July 7th. In this context, the UNESCO has named July 7th as World Kiswahili Language Day. And we'll probably go back and forth in this, talking about Swahili and Kiswahili. If you're speaking in Swahili and referring to the language, you do say Kiswahili. Ki is a prefix that will apply to languages. And people around the globe are very excited about UNESCO actually granting this day. And I want to read you a little bit about what it was about. Swahili is the first African language to be honored by the UN and is one of the official languages of the African Union, who stated the renewed push for Kiswahili to become a lingua franca in Africa promises to benefit the continent and the world. The effort is set to reduce Africa's reliance on foreign languages in official communications, lead to the recognition and spread of Kiswahili, and promote Pan-Africanism. So it's really about unification. And as we know, a lot of the official languages that are used for communication now are those from the colonizers. And so they're really pushing for an African identity with this. The reason they chose July 7th was in 1954, what was then Tanganyika, which later joined with Zanzibar to become Tanzania. TANU was the ruling party of Tanganyika, and it was led by this man, Julius Nyerere. I'm going to butcher his name. He declared that Swahili was an important tool in the fight for independence. At that time, there were 120 tribes in Tanganyika, each with their own language. And so to unify, to become independent, they really needed a means of communication. So that was why there was a big push at that time for Swahili, so they could rise up and become independent and have the colonizers leave. And we'll talk about in a little bit. What's kind of funny though, is it was really, Tanganyika was colonized by the Germans. And it was really the Germans who are pushing Swahili as a form of communication in their administration of the area. In part because they were a little arrogant and thought that German was probably too difficult for the local people to learn. So they actually started using Swahili, which then became a tool to oust them. So it was kind of beautiful. But today, where is Swahili spoken? Oh, I forgot. I was going to let you listen a little bit of Swahili first. If you've ever been to Kenya, you've heard this song because it's played at every tourist place. We already said you know a little bit, but I'm just going to play a minute of this, not even a whole minute, so you can kind of hear some of the Swahili.
You guys can sing along, huh? Every time.
Nzuri sana, wageni wakaribishwa, Kenya yetu hakuna matata.
If we play it one more time, you can just sing along with it. Now you've heard it once, this time you can sing with it.
Jambo, jambo bwana, habari gani? Nzuri sana, wageni wakaribishwa, Kenya yetu hakuna matata.
Okay, so I'll
Yeah,
stop it there.
and I finally had just got this song out of my mind. So thank you, Andrea.
But the words basically mean hello, how are you, welcome
to Kenya.
to Kenya. And
have no
you will
problems.
hear that, yes, there are no problems in Kenya. Hakuna Matata, you've probably heard that. But this map shows where Swahili is spoken. And it's 14 countries in Africa where it is spoken widely. And they are Burundi, the Comoros Islands, Democratic Republic of Congo, Kenya, Malawi, Mozambique, Rwanda, Somalia, South Sudan, Tanzania, Uganda, and Zambia. It's also the official language of the East African community, but it's also spread because of the trade that went on as far north as Oman and Yemen in the Middle East. And just more recently, some of the Southern African countries have legalized the teaching of Swahili in schools there. In the United States, it is now offered in more than 100 colleges and universities across the US, which includes the University of Kansas, who teaches Swahili. It's estimated in the United States that there's 90,000 speakers, but worldwide there are over 200 million speakers of Swahili, making it one of the top 10 most spoken languages in the world. So this whole thing about UN recognizing and all that in some ways is a little late in coming, because Swahili is really grown. So first wanted to talk about the actual Swahili tribe, the Swahili people, and the word Swahili actually comes from Arabic, which means the people of the coast. And so these are the people along the coastline that were a lot of the first line of contact with the traders and different people. There's many influences on Swahili though, with the roots of it are Bantu. Wasim was talking about when he was in the Gambia, he could kind of understand what people were saying because it had Bantu roots to it, just like Swahili does. But it's had influences through trade and colonization by, it's been influenced by Hindi, Persian, Chinese, Portuguese, German, and more recently, English has had a very on Swahili. And there are many words that have foreign origins. So the word sita is Arabic for 6, which is 6 in Swahili. We already talked about saba, meaning 7. Shule, if anybody knows German,
School. Sorry.
I know
My
some
bad.
people here speak German. Our friend from Austria and Miriam both speak German. Schule is school, which is from the German. Bandera, if anybody speaks Portuguese, it means flag. Kitabu, again from Arabic, is book. Pesa means money in Hindi. And you see if you can guess what language this one is from and what it means. Motoka. Any guess at what that means?
French.
Nope. Motoka.
Is it
Come on.
motor car in English?
It is a motor car in English. Which reminds me of the time when I was living in Kenya, the school where I taught at, and actually I'll show a picture of it pretty soon. Where we were, there was no electricity, no running water, and I was trying to learn Swahili. But I had never, been around a refrigerator till I was visiting Wasim at their house in another city. And so I looked at him, I was like, can you please tell me how to say refrigerator in Swahili? And he said,
We don't have such a word.
friggy.
Friggy, yeah.
It was friggy. So from then on, I didn't know if I could trust him as a Swahili teacher. One of the things that the Arab trade also brought to the coast and to Africa is the religion of Islam. So most of the Swahili along the coastline are Muslims, but as you go through that list of 14 countries I read, a lot of them are Christian countries. There's a lot of people that have practiced traditional religions. There's, because of colonization, a lot of Indians were brought to Africa. So Hindus, Sikhs, Jains are not uncommon. So there's a lot of diversity even within the religion part of it. And we're talking about how Swahili spread from the coastline. In the early 19th century, Swahili spread largely through trade. And the trade at that point in time was a lot of the Arab trade, and it was gold, ivory, and slave caravans. So a lot of slaves went through Mombasa on the coast there. They traveled as far north as Uganda and as far west as the Congo. And so what they would do is they would stop along the coast and they would recruit workers to come with them on these caravans. So these Swahili people were the ones that were kind of conscripted into helping go bring out the ivory and the gold and help with the slave trade. It was, as I mentioned earlier, also spread by the colonists as a use of administration and try to, so they wouldn't have to learn so many languages. They also pushed Swahili as that. And then the fact that it was used as a tool for fighting for independence was a great thing. Because of all this trade and the spread of Swahili, it has become and is growing now as the language of commerce within Africa. It's pushed a lot by a lot of the intellectuals, freedom fighters, civil rights activists, scholarly professionals. And the early writing of Swahili was the earliest script found that was Swahili was found written in Arabic, but it is now written in with the Roman alphabet. In the early 1730s, some of the British really pushed for standardizing Swahili and brought in the Roman alphabet to be used as officially for that. One of the big controversies was which Swahili, because of the diversity up and down the coast. And as you go in from the coast, everything changes a little bit. It's kind of like going to South America and speaking Spanish, where, things are said a little differently in each country. But they picked, they identified the island of Zanzibar as being probably the standard, or what they consider the purest form of Swahili. So it has become the standard of Swahili. And you will notice big differences between even like Kenyans who speak Swahili and Tanzanians who speak Swahili. But the fact that it is written in the same alphabet as English makes it easier for English learners to learn it.
Yeah, so there's a huge difference. So the Swahili spoken in Zanzibar is like the British speaking English, and the Swahili spoken in Kenya is like American speaking English. Does that make sense? So that's, I mean, they speak perfect Swahili. Us, we speak Shang, which is slang,
Swahili slang.
different than what the Tanzanians do.
But even in Tanzania, they have slang words also, but they're different from country to country. One of the nice things learning it as an English speaker is it is written very phonetically. So normally you can sound out words and at least pronounce them close to how they're supposed to be pronounced, or at least just a true Swahili speaker will understand mostly what you're saying. And then there's been a big, since the 1960s, the mid 60s, when a lot of the African continent countries gained their independence, there's been a big push for Swahili literature, Swahili poetry, Swahili music, Swahili movies, Swahili TV programs. And so since independence, a lot of more scholarly articles and a lot more professionals have really developed the arts and literary part of that, which we will talk a little bit about too. And as you probably all know, one of the values of learning a language is it gives you insights into the cultures. And so learning Swahili and speaking Swahili helps open up more of an African worldview for people. Some examples of that are even in the noun classes. Nouns are grouped in Swahili. So for human beings, it's the class is mtu for person or watu for people. So that they're mwa nouns. Where if you're talking about trees, it would be mti or miti, depending on trees. And then also they have a diminutive form on them. So if you're talking about birds, a regular sized bird is ndege. Small bird is hidege, and a large bird is dege. And that's all the
definitions.
Swahili is the second language lesson I'm going to give you on those, but it kind of helps you understand, they do put people in a class separate from other things. So gives you kind of the valuing that Africans have of community and people.
Even age factor. We talk in a different way when you talk to your elders than your age mates and then younger kids. So there's
kind of like Spanish with the formal and informal.
Respect part in there.
And we talked about people and family.
Umoja.
Ujama. I was going to have him say it so I wouldn't butcher it. And anyway, Ujama. This, maybe you've seen a carving like this. This is normally done by the Makonde people from Tanzania. It is carved out of ebony. Beautiful, valuable carvings. They have to carve them when the tree is freshly cut, because as it ages, it hardens and it's a very hard wood. But one of the things, Ujama means coming together. And what this shows in here, you can see there's a lot of people. It shows the emphasis on family and community. And it's very much family and community over the individual. And I know Maria's here, and I've heard her talk about some of the shame and honor cultures, where an individual can either bring shame or honor to their entire family or their entire community. And that is very much in Swahili cultures. The family comes before the individual, the community comes before the individual. Marriage is very much viewed as a marriage of two families and not two individuals. There are still arranged marriages in these cultures and different traditions that go along with that. Often it is considered that the bride marries into the husband's family. So there has been what's commonly referred to as bride price or some things, and we've had the honor of sitting in on some of the negotiations
We did one
between
here.
the families.
My mom's wedding was arranged. We always laugh about this because she had never met my dad. And
She served him tea once.
yeah, the family came over and she served tea, and then my dad looked at her and I guess he approved that she was beautiful enough for him to marry her. And I lost my dad 3 years ago. They were happily married ever since,
But she was 16 at the time, and he was from the other side of Kenya. So as soon as they were married, she was off
She's taken away,
living
yeah.
at her mother-in-law's house with her husband and his brothers and their families. So they had a giant house when you
So,
guys
yeah,
lived there.
Yeah, again, the cultural expectations of Americans here is a little bit different than what we would have back home. Is the male never leaves the home. The daughters always leave with their husbands. So like my mom lives with me right now, and I'm the oldest. And since I lost my dad, it's my responsibility as a male to take care of my mom. So my mom has been with us forever, which is a very good thing. I love that. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, well, one of the differences there though is we should actually be living in her home, and Wasim's brother should be there with his
Yeah.
wife too. But so the world does things, but there's still that obligation of caring for your parents. If you've noticed here in Kansas City and across the US, if you go to a lot of the nursing homes and facilities that serve older people,
African.
you will
yeah.
find a lot of Africans, especially Kenyans and Tanzanians, that work in those places. And part of that is just the valuing of elders that people have within these communities, and how the kids are taught respect. An example is one of our Kenyan friends, her son went to school with our kids in high school. And what's funny about high school kids is, sometimes I would know some of them, and there was like one of the kids that was from the United States. If he was around his friends, he would pretend he didn't know me. But if he wasn't around his friends, he would always talk to me. But there was a day that I saw Kirk, our Kenyan friend's son, there, and he walked right by me and didn't say hello. I'm like, you stop. I said, what are you supposed to do? He's like, oh, I am so sorry. How are you? He reached out, he shook my hand. He's nice to see you. Because in Swahili cultures, it is, if the young people run into a person they know who is older than them, they are supposed to stop, greet them, and show them the respect. And I knew Kirk was supposed to be doing that, so I stopped him and made him do that. Titles also are very important. When I was in Kenya and had one of our kids with us, the Kenyans who were with us referred to me as Mama Nile. My son's name was Nile, and I am his mother, so they wouldn't call me Andrea. It was Mama Nile. To show respect about any woman of childbearing age, if people don't know them, they will refer to them as Mama. Aunts and uncles are not called just by their name. It's always aunt, we'll use Miriam as an example, or Uncle Craig, Uncle Bob, whatever it is, but the title is always with that when they're referring to people who are older than them. There are other titles.
Like I use our story.
Oh, I won't tell that story.
Yeah.
When I first met Wasim, he was always with this big group of guys that were right around his age. They thought they were pretty hot stuff, but he was introducing me to them, and he'd say, this is my brother Chotu, this is my brother Kadim, this is my brother Monet, and after a while I'm thinking, this poor woman, these guys are about the same age, and she's had like 12 of them.
And she felt really sorry for my mom.
I did,
and we are having dinner, and she's like, I feel really sorry for your mom. I'm like, why is that? She's like, you have all these siblings. And it still didn't hit me. So we don't use the word cousin. So I just introduce everyone as my brother or my sister.
And some of them weren't even blood relations.
Yes. Family.
But because you grow up together, they are like brothers and sisters. So yes, I got over feeling sorry for his mother. except she did raise him, but we'll talk about that one later. But other titles like Baba, which means father, or even one thing that shocked me is I would hear the same group of guys refer to their fathers as Mzee. And Mzee means old person, old. And, here, growing up here, calling somebody old, I mean, you could get in trouble telling somebody they were old, you still can. And so they kept saying, oh, my Mzee did this, or my Mzee said that. And I'm thinking, what is the thing? It is very much a term of endearment, a sign of respect, because elders are to be respected. They have the knowledge. And so it was a very positive, proper thing to do. We even have a business partner now in Kenya that, because he's held different offices, he had the title honorable. So even now, even though we're in business peers with him, we refer to him always as honorable because he is older and he has earned that title and he deserves that sort of respect. Another way of showing respect, I talked about, stopping Kirk to make him say hello to me. If you walk into a room, and this would happen even when I was teaching there, and we had kind of a teacher's lounge, one room where we could all be. Whenever somebody new would come in the room, they would go around the entire room and shake hands with every single person in the room because it is about the group. And so you go in and you say hello to everyone, whether you know them or not, you say hello to them.
So we've got like 8 chats. We can't check them. Does anybody?
Oh, here we go.
Okay, there we
They
go.
might not be able to see them.
Okay.
Oh, Patricia, your mom was with you too. Sorry to hear
thank
about
you.
your dad. Oh, yes.
Dege.
Yes, airplanes are also in Dege. Yes, the word of airport even keeps in Dege in it, which is, yes, that's why and you can see that from an African point of view, especially early on when, air travel was not as common, but it was more common for people from the West to utilize it. And these planes were coming in that, yeah, you would probably call it a bird, which is very true. And I mentioned business a little bit. You never start a business meeting with the business. You don't run into a coworker and just talk about work. You don't send an email and get right to the topic of the email. It is always first about how was the person, how was their family. It's all about the relationships. The business follows behind that, but if you don't build first the relationship and maintain that relationship.
So, for example, this class right now, it would be extremely rude if you are not on camera in an African traditional setting, because it's all about emotions, body language. I talk a lot with my hands, and you can catch yourself by looking at somebody that, okay, you've gone a little bit too far, or you're too happy, things like that. So we always encourage. I know it's difficult since COVID happened and everybody's now at home and dressed up, not down, but we do encourage
Face to
face.
Mhm.
That's really, really important.
Yeah, what I find myself doing is before I send my email, I usually type out my email, then it's, oh wait, I have to go to the front and say, hello, how are you? How's your family?
Yeah.
And then I can send it. But some of the cultural traditions in business even extend to emails.
And that's a culture shock for a lot of Americans that I'm working with right now, is they literally want to go straight to like, okay, I don't have time for all this. I really want to just get I'm like, dude, we will not get anywhere if we're not nice. And being nice is taking time to actually find out. So I'll use Gambia, for example. It was amazing. Anywhere I went, and the street guys would just say, are you okay? I would say, I'm okay. Are you okay? Yes, I'm okay. That was it. But that was respect, just enough respect for things to move on. And here we don't have time to find out about somebody. I mean, that's you're asking too much information on somebody's family or something like that. They want to be very private in that.
Well, we'll talk about time here in a minute too, because
Yeah.
time does have a whole different meaning. Harambe.
Harambe, coming together.
the idea of coming together. It's especially prevalent across Kenya, but Harambe was even used in the fight for independence, which, you know, was a call for help or a call for people to come together there for a cause. It's even now you hear it if there's a fire out in one of the villages, they don't have a fire department, so people will yell Harambe and people will come to the aid or the rescue. You can see, is that oh yes, Miriam asked about Harambe. Yes, the word Harambe is even on the Kenyan flag. It is very much part of the Kenyan culture. You can see people here putting up a telephone line. That's just people from the community that are putting up that pole to get the lines in. The building on the right is one of the schools I taught at in Kenya, and it was called the Harambee School. It was called the Harambee School because it's, you know, unlike here where you have public education and tax dollars build the school.
I was actually Andrea's student.
He's lying.
At that school that she's showing you guys.
He is lying through his teeth. He always tells people that, like a Mary Kay Letourneau or somebody. But anyway, back to the school. But there's a huge value for on education. For one, people see it as a way forward and a way to elevate their families and their community, but not just about themselves, their families and the community. So this school, to have it built, they did what they call a Harambe, which means people came together and people donated money. They donated building supplies. They came together and helped build it. It was all part of that. And I was a college graduate, but I had students in my class who were actually older than me because they also had to pay school fees to go there. So I had students who were older than me because they would stop, take a year or two off work, raise money, and then come back to finish school. So there was a very big dedication to education. Kenyans who are here especially have brought the idea of Harambe with them. If somebody has some sort of issue, especially if somebody actually dies here and wants to be buried back home in Kenya, there will be a cry of Harambe going out, and people then will donate money to help repatriate that person back home, as they would say. And, you know, I don't know if any of you have ever been involved in that. It's about $30,000-$40,000 to get a body shipped home. But the community steps up and comes together. Even if they've never met the person, people will donate money for that Harambe. So it's a very, again, back to that idea of community and taking care of each other. Well, we started on this topic a little bit before the meeting started talking about food.
Yeah, we started with food, which is quite interesting.
Oh, and I don't know, and there are some actually, especially in the Northeast area, there's always been some offerings of East African food, at least. I'm wondering if anybody here has had some of the food from East Africa and what you thought of that. Let's see if I can see people better here.
Gotten a few from Global FC families of like Ugali and chapati and mandazi and all
Love
those.
bodies, yes.
Yeah.
Mandazi, yes, anything.
So how would you describe ugali to somebody that has never eaten ugali?
You know, I keep trying and I don't know that I do it successfully. I always just say, I'm like, it's just a grain. And you boil some water and you put the grain in there and then it thickens up and it's just this round thing and then you take a piece of it and that's about all I can do. And we did charades or something one time and one of the kids like put Ugali on charades and every time they'd be like, is this? And then if it wasn't like the people guessing if they weren't African, they'd be like, money? What are you doing?
No, I really love you've got it down literally the way you did
Well,
it.
they made me cook it one time too, and I was like, guys, my arms are not strong enough for this.
No.
Like,
The secret I learned from Wasim's father, it's much better if you make it with milk and butter. Of course, about anything's better with milk and butter.
We add a little bit of milk and butter, so it's easier to scroll the
But just to talk about ugali,
down.
my students, they flat out told me that a meal without ugali is not a meal. Ugali is ground maize, so ground white corn. And I've always described it, it's kind of like cream of wheat that's set out for a day or two. I gotten kind of thick and a little bit stiff. But then, yeah, you use it to pick up your greens. You use it to pick up your meat, the stew, whatever it is.
Yeah, one of the importance about ugali was it would fill you up, but the ugali itself did not have any flavor. So whatever food you ate with it, it would complement that dish. So if it was meat, chicken, it would not take away the flavor of the meat and the chicken. It would be just an adding feeling with that.
Which is not to say East African food does not have flavor. In fact, if we think of the coastline there,
Look at it.
the spices that were traded up and down the coastline, that, you know, the trade went all the way up to India, all the way down. Still today, some of those areas are big spice exporters. So, you know, you have dishes that have a lot of cardamom, garlic, saffron, turmeric, black pepper, ginger, cloves, cumin, and a lot of things cooked with coconut things, if you have coconut rice or something. So the food actually is very flavorful, except yes, probably ugali. But even the chapatis, which I don't know, you can see this when I do that, the chapatis up there.
So you know, I'm fasting, Andrea.
So
How about we go to a
racing
different
move on.
slide?
Okay, we'll move on from food.
Andrew,
Anyway,
Chong has his hand up. He has a question.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
not a question, just a comment. The other day I was driving one of my boys to school and I asked him what his favorite food was and he said pizza. I said, well, do you like pizza better? Which is better, pizza or Brugali? And he goes, no, Brugali, because that's where I'm from. If I said pizza, my dad would kill me.
That's true. That's true. That is true.
One of our boys also loves to say that the reason the teams they play against, all those kids fall over all the time versus our boys like being able to stay on their feet is because of Bugali. They're like, they need to eat more fufu so they don't fall over all the time anytime we just touch them.
And I think they're right on that.
I think they should not speak this out loud. Keep it in house.
Yeah, don't give away team secrets.
The other team gets to hear ugali, and next thing you know, they are eating ugali. So
Okay, moving on, so I don't get in trouble here with Wasim. And I'll
this is
skip.
really good
This is
too.
a video.
go ahead.
We're kind of running late on
Let's
time,
just skip the
so
video.
but
This is really good.
you can search YouTube. You know, YouTube has everything. Search for Swahili food, and there's some instructions. This dish actually is one, and I'll just tell you briefly. That's a tamarind sauce in the middle, and this is, you take a potato and you slice it open, and then you put a mixture of chili powder, lime juice, and salt in the middle of it. Put it back together. Dip it in flour, water, and salt, I think is what the coating is. And then you deep fry it. Of course, deep frying it makes everything taste really good, but then you have that zip of the chili powder in the middle of the potato. It's really good. And use the tamarind sauce to dip it. Now I'm probably in big trouble with Wasim. So,
No, it's good.
oh wait, I was gonna skip that. Let's go back to time. Time's a safer topic. And you can see, does anybody want to volunteer to read this Swahili phrase here?
I will, and I'm familiar with that one.
What is it? It's Haraka, haraka.
Baraka hai na baraka.
What
If
is
you
it?
go it means like if you go fast, there's no blessings.
Very
Well
good.
said.
Yes, haraka, haraka, haina baraka. Hurry, hurry is without blessing.
Yeah.
And if you ask people about time in Africa, they will tell you there is no time
I mean,
in Africa.
the Ethiopians have a proverb which they say, you have the clocks, we have the time. And this really happened to me. So I went home and I was excited. I haven't been home for a while. And I asked them what we're going to do the next day. And they said, what do you want to do? I said, hey, pick me up at 8 o'clock and we'll go and okay. So I got up at 6, had my breakfast, everything ready. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. They came at 2. And I was really, really mad. I was like, guys. And they're like, what did you want to do at 8 o'clock? I said, why did you say yes? They said, it just sounded good. You wanted to do meet at 8 and we were like, hey, this guy's too hyped up. Let's just say 8 o'clock is good. And then like, don't you think somebody would have called? He said, dude, we were asleep. Why would we be up at 8 calling you? So yes, time, being American, which is, I've lived longer in the United States than I've lived in Africa, which is very frustrating for me, is time management. Meetings with the emails responses mean nothing. Literally, and I hate these auto responses. You send a message and you immediately say, I'm like, ooh, this person is really good. It's an auto response. And then you go, you're waiting outside, and the guy goes, he's late. And he goes, what are you doing here? I said, hey, I sent you an email. He said, but why didn't you SMS me? Excuse me? You just responded. He said, no, I did not respond. I don't even check my emails.
Here we expect a response in 24 hours.
So time.
Oh, and it's also ties back into what we were talking about earlier about some of the respect and some of that stuff. We facilitate a lot of calls between business people here and on the Africa side. And we had a young Ugandan professional on a call with some people from here and Dubai. And people from here in Dubai were expressing some frustration because they wanted to get something by a certain time. And this young Ugandan man had been educated here in the States. So he understood both sides of the thinking. But he said, if you ask us if we can get you something by Monday, we will say yes. He said, we will never tell you no. Even if they know it won't happen until Monday or even that week or the following week. But it's part of that respect. If somebody in authority, has a request, you have to.
This should go with you guys who are the tutors. When you ask your students to do something and you say Monday, please say Monday, the 2nd of January, because you just said Monday. It can be any Monday in this year.
But I've met some of these kids, for good or for bad, some of these kids pick up American things really quickly.
And just in a sidetrack, when I was working with refugees, a lot of times you empower a child to translate for you. And I worked with the school district, and there was this child that was translating for his parents what the teacher was saying. It was not what the teacher was saying. It was what because
you could understand the
Swahili. I could understand, and I was just astonished, like, wow, you can just lie like this, dude. And it was about him not being, it was all about tardiness. And he was explaining to his mom how wonderful the teacher thought he was, until I started speaking Swahili. And then he looked at me and like, busted. But yeah, so I know you guys work with a lot of young African kids. Time, assignments, you have to, I'm sure you have to motivate them some way. Good luck on that one.
Well, even, and this has a clock, and on this, you'll see the numbers look a little bit off on this because there is such a thing as Swahili time.
Yeah.
And in Swahili time, basically the day starts when the sun comes up and the day ends when the sun goes down. The sun comes up at what we would say is 6 a.m. And then an hour later, so 1 hour after sunrise, we would say is 7 a.m. They say that is Samoja, which is
up, yeah,
1. So 7 a.m. in our time is 1 a.m. in Swahili time. And so the clock is a little bit, it's positioned here so that the arms are the same way we would normally read them, but it is showing us the Swahili time that it is. So this way though, when your clock starts at 1 and ends at 12, if you're talking about midday, like noon, it's right in the middle. It's 6, Sasita, 6. At midnight, which is in the middle of the night, it is again Sasita, the PM. It's 6 at night.
Again, like when I went back home, I can just use a few examples. Hadn't seen a friend for a long time. Picked him up on the side of the road and said, hey, so where do you live? He said, I just live down here. Literally thinking like, hey, 2 blocks. Half an hour into the drive. He's like, yeah, we're almost there. 2 hours. It took me 2 hours to drop this guy one way and I had to go back. So again, when I one of the comments here, somebody said that US time, literally when we say like 8 o'clock, American time, not African time. That's one of the things that I learned with my refugees was I would give them, and Andrea does that to me here. She does this to me every time, and she succeeds. She'll tell me the meeting is at 6. It's literally at 8 o'clock. So I'm late for that 6 o'clock one, but only to find out I'm early for the meeting. Like today, she fooled me today too. So,
It's
anyway.
a life skill. One of the first Swahili phrases that I learned was "mi hapo tu," means it's just near. When I went to visit the first school I taught at, as I said, there was no paved roads near the school either. So, I got off the bus where I needed to then start walking into where the school was, and stuck out like a sore thumb, of course, with blonde hair and blue eyes and very white skin. So everybody, not only did they know that I was a stranger and not from there, because these things are all about the community, the entire community knew there was American teachers coming. So they knew exactly who we were too, as soon as we showed up. But then they said, we'll take you to the school. And what I found out is, they kept saying "ni hapo tu," but they were stopping at like everybody's house around the community. What really should have been about a 45-minute to an hour walk turned into a 3-hour walk, but they kept telling me "ni hapo tu." When I say, "How far is the school?" "Ni hapo tu." So yeah, a whole different concept of time. Was that message we just chimed there? And we are getting a little bit late on here. A little bit
Any
about.
questions from anyone?
Well, I was just I'll just whiz through some of this, but then whatever's of interest of you, we can have a better discussion with. The Swahili art, especially along the coastal line, there has a lot of Arabic influence. So it's a lot about designs and clothing and furniture. If you go to the island of Lamu or the island of Zanzibar that had, very heavy Islamic and Arabic influence, you can tell the wealth of a family by how ornate the doors are. And there are some gorgeous doors there that you find. In Islam, it's not really good to have images or carvings of people. Swahili music, there is a big push. This one was a more traditional one, and I'm going to kind of skip through. This one, of course, is a modern hip hop one. In the music scene, there is Swahili hip hop, and it's a little different in each country, but it's this great mix of American hip hop, but with traditional rhythms and beats that are very much African and very much of those places. This Diamond is one of the big stars from Tanzania. Oh, and I was going to get into the conga. Yes, I just, we talked too much.
Sorry, Andrea is reading messages as we
Yes,
speak, and somebody just mentioned that.
And yes, conga is beautiful art form, and this is traditional clothing that women wear, but they have multiple uses. I don't know if you can see this woman here has her baby on her back that is tied on with a conga. They use it for everything. And yes, there was a video of girls showing how to put on the different ways of putting on a conga. It can be worn in many ways. It's really almost a tool for people. But one of the things which tells you a lot about the cultures is the congas. They're a piece of cloth that you can see there, but they all have a saying on them. And so this one, Utamo wa mume muwewane, you're gonna laugh at the sweetness of a man is to be a husband. So these women normally wear these. So it gives you kind of insights into a woman's mind. This one is talking about fear a man lying through his teeth as you do a lion.
Sorry.
Just a couple more. And Swahili can be very poetic, very
I thought you would have
nice too.
Kupiga BBC on
No,
that.
that was my favorite one. We were visiting Lamu and they had a conga there that they had actually framed on the wall, and it said Kupiga BBC Dawa, which translate to beating your wife is not the medicine, which makes even more sense in that there was a time the Kenyan parliament was debating whether to outlaw wife beating. And one of the
sad.
parliamentarians' argument was, but if I don't beat her, how will I make her behave? So, but then women were wearing around these congas saying, Kupiga bibi sidawa. And then, the spirituality of a lot of the Swahili speakers, as we said, there's a diversity of religions there, but very much faith-based, very believing, very dedicated to a higher power and to God. So, as far as finding warm, welcoming, good people, go to any of the Swahili areas and you would be embraced. And I think you guys working with Global FC have felt a lot of that from the families that have come here. And even though some of them have gone, witnessed and been through horrible, terrible times, they're still very warm. We're not going to do holidays and celebrations, but just talk about the diversity in Swahili speaking areas. And I'm going to stop sharing so I can see people here too. But yeah, just the diversity among Swahili speakers. As we said, there's, I think the Congo alone has, and I wrote it down, DRC has over 200 languages spoken there. So, I mean, each of those languages represents a different tribe. They each have unique customs, but across Swahili speakers are some of these ideas that very much tie into the valuing of people and helping one another and supporting one another. But, if any of you guys had thoughts or stories that this reminded you of with some of your interactions with some of the Swahili speakers or questions.
I'm really excited about, I'm forgetting your name. You went to
Okay.
Rwanda, Rebecca.
Yeah.
Yep. And in Rwanda, they speak French, the Rwandese, and Swahili. And it is quite intriguing for me.
Mhm.
You did this at this age. This is amazing. Keep it up. I mean, this is something that really sticks out.
Thank you. I plan to.
Yeah, it's we need the young brains, because what's happening right now is a lot of the African smart kids are here. So we are brain dead in so many ways. And we would love for someone like you to go back there and be a role model. You would be surprised that how much impact you have done to young girls. Talking about women empowering and young girls, you have changed lives without even you realizing that you did that. So I recommend that you continue doing this, and it's
I was
something
going to
very
tell
nice.
Chung and Celeste. I have, and somebody had traveled to Taiwan in working with Vietnamese refugees here and in going to Taiwan to teach English and trying to learn Vietnamese and trying to learn, it was Mandarin, which is a little different than Cantonese. They both kicked my butt. Oh my word. If you guys could speak those tonal languages, Swahili will be a cakewalk for
Yeah.
you. So I encourage you to look into it because I was so happy when I started to learn Swahili that it was more graspable than some of the other languages that I tried to learn.
I tried Vietnamese, and I
did not speak any
yeah,
Vietnamese.
I could wish you Happy New Year. Chúc mừng năm mới. And so yeah.
Well, Rose asked earlier about an interaction with people that speak another language, and I've told this story before, but I had, when I was teaching Vietnamese refugees here, and I had a room of adults, one of my students, after a very long time, and we'd gotten to know each other, and we came a little bit closer, she pulled me to the side and she's like, "Teacher Andrea, do not call me by my name." She said, "Call me Betty."
Yeah.
And I said, "Why call you Betty?" Well, in English, when we're asking a question, like if I say Rose, if a question is a question to her, the inflection goes up. And so I was doing that to her. I calling her, and now I have a Vietnamese speaker here, and I'll butcher it again. And I'd say no, and it would go up. And she said, the way you say my name, no, she said my name means bluebird, but the way you're saying it, it means bad breath. But since she and I were very close, I continued to call her by her Vietnamese name, mispronouncing it every time, and she would just start laughing and shaking her head at me. But yes, been there for those types of embarrassing moments more than once.
Yeah, even this one.
Yeah, we're not telling that story either. We have too many
But
stories.
anyway, so any questions?
Yeah, do we have any questions or a lot of comments in the chat? If anyone wants to share now or have a question?
Please share.
I
John?
just wanted to observe that there's a lot of similarities between their culture and my culture as far as addressing elders, and then, you know, calling people aunts and uncles who might not be related to you, and then your cousins or brothers and sisters. So that's that really sounded familiar to me. Feel good to hear.
Yeah. Sean, if I ever see you in person, I'll tell you the story when I just totally embarrassed myself with one of my male older Vietnamese students. And you know, a Vietnamese, you greet person differently if they're male or female, if they're older or they're younger. And I won't repeat here what I said, but as soon as it came out of my mouth and his face dropped, I knew exactly what I had said. But when I see you in person, I'll tell you about that one. It is, there are some things that are just too embarrassing to get on a video here. So
I don't think we taught you guys a lot about speaking the language, but we did get some insights on the culture and the language, hopefully.
I have a question.
Mhm.
Is Swahili typically the first language for people? For example, with a lot of the Congolese, they speak another language, Kibembe,
mhm.
but
Yes.
then it seems like when they're with others, then they'll change to Swahili.
Yes.
Yeah, that's
From
a
other
very good-
countries.
great question, which we should have mentioned that in here, because I think I mentioned at the beginning, there's over 200 million Swahili speakers in the world. Less than 1 million of them is Swahili their first language. It's usually, they're usually fluent in 2, 3, 4 languages, and Swahili is either second, third, or fourth language. So even Wasim mentioned earlier, he speaks 7 languages. Well, one was the language they spoke at home.
Yeah.
One was the language of the tribe that lived in the community where he lived. One was Swahili, which is the national language of Kenya, and one was English, which is the official language of Kenya. And then he learned some others, but almost every African you meet probably speaks 3, 4 languages.
It was fun with Celeste when we met at the Salvation Army, and your kids, they kept on switching languages thinking they would fool me. And I would every time because they were like, wait, okay. They would switch languages in between, like 3, 4 different languages. And this was so exciting for me because I was challenged. And when I first came here, I would take words from a different language because I could describe something really better in a sentence. So I would have a word from 1 to, because I speak 7, so I could literally have a whole sentence with different words from a different language. And because of my friends, we all spoke. It was really interesting the way, and that was my problem when I first came here and I went to school. I would speak English and say some things in Swahili or in Punjabi or in Urdu. And the teacher and everybody else would look at me like, wait. What did you just say here? I'm like, what? So, yes. So Swahili is not the primary language of normally, but it's like, I think Tanzania is the only country left, which it's the official language.
Well, a lot of them are like Kenya, where they might have
Yeah,
2.
we have English as our official language, and then Swahili as a national language. So I hope that answers the question. Okay, we got 5 minutes.
I have a question. Well, now that, since you talked about community is greater than family, is greater than individual, I start to wonder now whether I'm motivating these kids in the wrong way sometimes when I talk about, you know, trying harder in school, and then, you know, it's like you can get a good job and you could be rich and you could buy a Ferrari. And that's a very individually focused motivation. So I'm wondering if that's like completely wrong.
Yes and yes. So number one, the American dream. You have to remember the American dream. So realistically, what are the chances of one achieving the American dream? So what's the definition of the American dream? This is where I think you need to connect with your kids. Mostly what they watch on television, in the movies, it's not reality. Okay, we've had in the past where somebody raised funds for a kid to come to school in America. But then on Instagram, the guy goes and takes a picture, selfie on a Ferrari and puts it on Instagram. And next thing, everybody's upset in that village. They're like, okay, we sent this kid to study and now he owns a Ferrari. And this he doesn't own that. But this is where reality check is good, but a real job, their dream is like, hey, you know what? I can be a great soccer player and I will be like Messi, Ronaldo, Ronaldinho. This is their vision. So you don't need to shatter it, but you need to talk to them like, what if you get injured at a young age?
Well, of course, you guys know you're dealing with multicultural kids. They're living a culture at home that their parents are trying to reinforce. Yes. And then they're at school and they're exposed to TV or whatever they're doing on social media and learning all these American values that sometimes do kind of conflict with each other. Working hard to get a good education, to get a good job actually can tie into both of those, because yes, it's about you making yourself and your life better. But the expectation will be that, yes, your family and your community wants you to do that because that helps uplift the whole family and the community. So, you know, pushing them in that way is not a wrong or bad thing. And it can support both of these things, because you watch these kids and they really, some of them do a very delicate dance back and forth between, you know, being the American kid in school and that good son at home or that good daughter at home.
And a lot of the kids are caught in between because some of them are born here and their parents still have this African mentality of how one should behave. I'm one of them. I have a daughter. She drives me nuts. All her friends are boys, like literally everyone. But that's my daughter. And I have, so it's a cultural thing.
Favoring the eldest son?
No, my eldest son, of course, he's my superstar. He's my firstborn. I mean, nobody can replace that.
The oldest son is
the oldest son.
Revered.
I mean, if my daughter was...
No, but you're the oldest son of your dad's oldest son of the oldest son. And so it's like a little prince was born.
Yeah, it's a cultural adaptation that we have to, especially you guys, trust me when I say this, they look up to you guys a lot. They feel that safe zone. At the same time, be on your toes.
Take them in the butt when they
These guys, all kids are kids, regardless where they are. Kids are kids. You just gotta find that safe.
Well, it's back to that, the relationship building.
Yeah.
You know, community and family is all about those relationships. So if you develop that relationship with those kids, you know, they value you and you become part of that community. And I think most of you have probably experienced kind of being sucked into being part of the community, being invited with the family and those things, which, you know, it's a priceless thing that you're doing, but you know, that goes two ways. Priceless for the kids and the families you're helping, but I know each of you have, you know, witnessed what it's done for your own lives.
We have been privileged to work with you guys. You guys are doing an amazing job. Seriously, this is something that I'm very proud of everyone on here. These kids have been through a lot.
Look what Celeste
You
draws.
know, Celeste, yeah, we love you. We love
Oh,
being around you.
Yeah, the kids talk about getting rich and buy a house for the
Yeah,
family and
yeah,
for themselves.
and
Yeah,
these are real dreams that they have. And I normally sometimes smack them and say, hey, okay, you need to wake up to make this reality. Don't be just living a dream, you know. And then music has a lot of influence. Music is what is really changing the way the young
I thought it was the social media.
no music has a lot of, I mean, profanity. I mean, we can go into a
Well,
lot of other
I
things.
would encourage you actually to, again, like I said, everything's on YouTube. If you, one of the things I was looking at last night, I just, did the East Africa top 20 hits for the week. And, it gives you some insights, because one of the things that a lot of Americans aren't able to understand is that the traditional African, the drums and, some of that, and the living in mud huts is only a small piece of what is Africa. The modern cities, I mean, if you look at a lot of these hip hop stars, what makes me crazy about a lot of the African ones is they try to emulate a lot of the American ones with, cars and throwing around the money and the girls. But there's a very modern side, but it's very specifically and uniquely there. And a lot of the kids you're working with, I'm sure, still watches the African hip hop and all of those things.
Okay. We
Okay.
run over time here, so
Okay,
sorry.
so let me kind of start to close this out. I think one of the things that one of the big takeaways with this is, while these children are living in the United States and are likely to be here for the rest of their lives, I mean, unless they do choose to go back home at some point, but they are living in the American culture, and they're having to learn how to navigate that. But I think it's important for us to help them understand that there is, they can have pride in the fact that they are bilingual. They can have pride in the fact that they have an accent. I've talked to some students that are concerned about their accent, and we've talked about that. And to have pride in their cultural roots, not feel like they have to turn their back on all of that to become, quote, American, whatever that might be. So I think as we're working with these students, I think helping them to understand that they have a wonderful opportunity here, but they also have a lot of gifts that they're bringing with, as in their language and in their a more of a global perspective than a lot of American students. So yeah. I think it's that great balance in between there. So what
sorry, just to add to that, labeling is very vital to us. They were refugees. They are no longer refugees. So this is something close to my heart. I'm here as an immigrant. So there's a difference. I chose to be here. They had no choice. So sorry, that's a whole new topic.
That's a whole nother aspect of looking, the connotation with that as well. So what we normally do with this is, right now we can conclude. I will stop recording, and this is kind of the end of our presentation. We want to thank Wasim and Andrea so much for sharing and giving us some insight into the Swahili language and African culture. So at this point, we are finished recording. If you would like to leave or you need to leave, feel free to, pop on out. You can give your thanks in the chat. And we will stay on for a few more minutes if you have a question that you would like to ask kind of off the record. I'm that type of person. I always like, when I go to presentations, and I'm getting here in the dark, my lights are off over on the other side. So anyway, so I will end our recording, and